Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, you're welcome as well. Today's video, we are going to learn how to draft this off-shoulder bodysuit. If this is something you would love to learn, kindly watch the video to the end. So I have a yard of crepe fabric here, and this is my pattern paper. I've done the chest line, bust line, waist line, and the length of the play suit. So I'm going to mark the neck width of 3 inches and the shoulder slope of 1 inch, and I'll go ahead to slant this out. So after that, I'll determine the center of the armhole area and also go in by 1/2 inch. Then I'll go ahead and take the armhole curve. So after taking the armhole curve, I'll go ahead and also take the neckline of 3 inches and I'll connect it to the neck width of 3 inches that I marked out here. The neck I'm marking here is actually not important, okay? So right now, now that I'm done with this part, so I'm going to be marking the crotch line, okay? Just as the same way we usually determine the crotch line of our jumpsuit. So what I'm going to be using is I'll use the quarter of my hip measurement for the crotch line, and I'm going to be measuring it from the waist. So the quarter of my hip is 10 inches, and that's going to be my crotch. Now, because this is a play suit, I'm going to be adding 2 inches to the quarter of my crotch. So that means I'm going to be marking 12 inches, just the same way we do for our jumpsuit. So from that line, I'll also come out by 1.5 inch. You can come out from 1 inch, 1 1/4, and 1 1/2. Okay, don't do more than that. So I'm just going to connect the points now. So what I'm going to mark now is the distance between the waist and the crotch line. Okay, so here is the here is half of what I have there after measuring the distance. So I'm going to be connecting now from that point to the crotch line point, okay, to that point where I marked as 1 1/2. So I just want to take the line so that you are going to understand what I'm talking about. All right, so that line is going to serve as our hip, okay? So right here now, I'll come out by about 4 inches. This will help us to take the curve from the crotch to where it's going to serve as our hip line. Okay, so I'm just going to use my pencil and this curve ruler to mark it before using my marker. So I'm just trying to use my pencil to get the measurements I have, to get the shape I want around there. Okay, so after that, I'm going to be taking the quarter of my measurement. So I'll take the quarter of my bust plus 1 inch sewing allowance, quarter of my waist plus 1 inch sewing allowance, and quarter of my hip plus 1 inch sewing allowance. To add a dart is optional, okay? I'm not adding that to this particular one. So I'll go ahead now and square it out. The same thing, I'll also do the same thing and square it to the hip area. So once that this is done, I'm just going to use my marker to eyeball the lines. So right here is going to serve as the front pattern, okay? So if you don't want yours to be an off shoulder, you can just cut it out the way it is right now, okay? But this is going to be an off shoulder, and I'm marking 5 inches downward. That's how off this play suit is going to be. So I'm going to mark the points. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to also determine how wide I want the neck to be. So I want the neck to be as wide as 5 inches, okay? So I'm going to connect that 5 inches back to the armhole area. So now I've succeeded in creating the off shoulder. So I'm going to be cutting the rest of this out. All right, so I don't want it to be straight, so I'm just coming down here by about 1 inch or about 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to use my curve ruler to mark it, okay? But if you want yours to be straight, then you don't need to come down by 1/2 inch at this point. So I'm just going to cut this out. So right now we have our off shoulder play suit. So I don't want to use another pattern to cut the back, so I'm just going to cut the back on the same pattern. Now if you want to cut our trouser, we usually add 2 inches up to 2.5 inches as our extension. Okay, so for you to get the extension, just divide the quarter of your hip divided by 4. Whatever you have plus half an inch is going to be the extension you will need for the back. So the quarter of my hip divided by 4 is 2.5, so I added extra half an inch to it. So that was why I came down 3 inches from the front crouch. So right now is going to be the back crouch. So you can decide to mark it straight like this, or you can use the curved parts of the ruler. Okay, it depends on whatever shape you want. I'm just going to use the curved part to rule it. So the place where I'm using my red marker now is going to serve as the back, while this will serve as the front. Okay, so when I want to cut, I'm going to be cutting the back first. So when I'm cutting on fabric, I will be using this pattern to cut the back first. Okay, so now the back is going to be having zipper allowance, so that was why I added zipper allowance to the back. I'm just going to extend the waistline and the hip line. So I'll remove half an inch at the waistline for zipper bulge, and I'll be stopping at the waistline. Just follow the process that I'm doing here, and you'll get it right. Sorry about my marker, but I'm going to use the lighter one now. All right, so this, I've created the zipper bulge, and I'm also going to extend the zipper line for the back crotch line here. So this is basically everything about this pattern. There is nothing much about this pattern. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and cut this off. So that half an inch I took away there, I'm adding it back to the waist so that I'm not short of fabric around there. All right guys, so I'll go ahead now and cut out the back first. Okay, so after cutting out the back, I'm going to use it to cut out the fabric for the back. Okay, I'm going to use that to cut the fabric for the back. So at the crotch line here, I decided to add half an inch for joining allowance. Okay, you're going to use that half an inch to join the front and back crouch together. So that was why I'm adding the half an inch over there. You can simply add it on your pattern paper when on your fabric when you are cutting it out. So I'm going to use this now to cut out the back fabric. Okay, so once I'm done cutting the back, I'll go ahead and cut off the zipper allowance, and then also cut off the front. So right here, this is the back, as you can see. So after cutting this now, I'm going to be using this pattern paper to cut the front. But before I cut out the front, I'm going to be cutting off the zipper allowance I have there, and also cut off the back crouch, and then I'll now use the remaining to cut the front. You can simply trace the back on another pattern paper if you still want the pattern. So right here, I've gone ahead to cut out the front, and this is what I have at the front. You can see what it looks like. All right, so the next thing I will go and do now is to attach my is to sew in the side. Okay, I'm going to be taking the side seam allowance, and after taking the side seam allowance, I'll now go ahead and use my bias to finish the armhole area, and also to finish the crouch area for both the front and back. And once I'm done, I'll bring it back for us to see what it looks like. All right guys, so I'm done stitching the side seam together, and I've also gone ahead to stitch the crouch area, and then I finished the crouch with the bias, as you can see, and the armhole area I also finished it with the bias. And at this zipper allowance, I also closed up a little part of it, and the rest is going to be the zipper allowance opening. So to get the peplum, I'm going to be cutting at the neck. What I'm going to do is to go ahead and measure my round shoulder to get the neck, to get the peplum at the neck. So my round shoulder is 38 plus 2 inches for the zipper allowance. That will be 40 because the peplum is going to extend to the zipper allowance. So 40 divided by 6.28, because 6.28 is the radius for a full circle, and since I'm cutting a full circle, so it's going to be 40 divided by 6.28. all right, so after dividing it, what I got is 6.5, and again you're going to be folding your fabric into 4. Okay, so I'm going to be marking 6.5 inches for my radius. I'll just mark it all around here from this point. Okay, I'm going to be marking 6.5 inches, and after that I'll also go ahead and mark the length of the peplum, which is going to be 6 inches. Okay, I'm going to be marking that, the length of the peplum, where I have the 6.5 inches mark. Okay, all right, so I'm just going around now to mark out the length of the peplum, and after that I'll go ahead and cut it out. So once you cut this out, all of the sides is going to be on fold, and you need to open it on one side. So since I already have a joining on the peplum, I'm just going to open up the joining. Okay, and that side will serve as the side that will go into the zipper allowance. So once that is done, this is what you are going to have, and I'm going to notch the center of the play suit and also notch the center of the peplum. Okay, because you're going to be placing the notched part on each other. And when you are placing your peplum on the fabric, make sure the right side of the play suit is facing the wrong side of the peplum. So now I'm going to place the center on top of each other, and you're going to be sewing from one center of the front to the armhole. Then you repeat the same thing for the other side of the armhole. You come to the back and also sew from the zipper allowance to the armhole area. You repeat the same thing for the other side, and the remaining left over here is going to serve as the sleeve, and that will also be for the second one as well. So I'm going to use this fabric now as the piping. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and stitch it to the neck. So I've gone ahead to stitch the fabric, the long stripe I cut out, stitch it to the neck. Okay, as you can see that the peplum, the wrong side of the peplum is facing the right side of the play suit, and then I've gone ahead to sew the strap on the neck area. So the next thing is to fold this in half an inch, I think half an inch twice or half an inch 3 times, and then you are going to be sewing it down on the neck, which is going to serve as the piping. So once that is done, I'll bring it back. So guys, I'm done sewing down the piping, and I've also gone ahead to stitch the zipper allowance at the back, and this is my sleeve. As you can see, that's going to serve as the sleeve. So this is pretty much what it's going to look like. Make sure you also fold in the lower part of your peplum. Okay, so guys, this is all about the play suits, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel, like and share this video. Okay, and I'm going to see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.